Death had a way of arriving on the clearest days. The Arizona sun blazed overhead, indifferent to the 100 American warriors trapped in the rocky prison of Ashford Valley, where training exercises had turned into something far deadlier. What military planners had designed as the ultimate combat simulation had become a killing ground, and Captain Sarah Mitchell, call sign Sam, was about to make a choice that would either save them all or destroy everything she'd spent her life building. This wasn't how her morning was supposed to go. But then again, nothing had gone according to plan, since her father died in the same valley 5 years ago, under circumstances that still didn't add up. Some daughters inherit jewelry. Sarah Mitchell inherited questions that wouldn't stay buried. 100 of America's finest warriors now huddled in defensive positions within the rocky confines of Ashford Valley, deep in the Arizona desert training grounds that had been designed to replicate the harshest combat environments on Earth. Except now, it wasn't a training exercise. Real blood stained the sand. Real bullets pinged off rocks. Real men were dying. Above the Tactical Operations Center at Edwards Air Force Base, satellite imagery painted a grim picture. Enemy forces had materialized from hidden mountain bases, surrounding the American special operators on 3 sides. The 4th side, what should have been their escape route, was now blocked by 2 state-of-the-art surface-to-air missile systems. Their deadly launch tubes pointed skyward, daring any aircraft to attempt rescue. Inside the command center, officers stood rigid before the massive screens. The clock on the wall seemed to tick with unusual loudness in the tense silence. "Thunder, actual to command." The radio crackled with the strained voice of Major Daniel Cooper, Eagle Team leader. Even through the static, the exhaustion was evident. "Ammo critical, down to 30 minutes of sustained defense, possibly less. Casualties mounting. We cannot hold this position." No one in the command center spoke. The unspoken truth hung in the air. These men were beyond conventional rescue parameters. The words acceptable loss formed silently on lips but remained unspoken. In the corner of the room, Brigadier General Thomas Bradford, commander of the 7th Tactical Air Wing, stood with his arms crossed, face carved from stone. At 62, Bradford was old-school military, a product of academies and protocols, a man who believed in systems over instinct. His silver hair was cut high and tight, his uniform pressed to knife-edge perfection. He tapped his finger rhythmically against his bicep as he absorbed the tactical display. "Options?" he asked finally, his voice cutting through the room. Colonel Frank Patterson, a weathered veteran with a face that told the story of too many wars and not enough peace, stepped forward. At 58, he should have retired years ago, but men like Patterson didn't know how to exist outside the service. His left hand, the real one, gestured toward the tactical display. "Sir, conventional extraction is impossible with those SAM sites active. They've already taken down our recon drone. Any helicopter insertion would be suicide." Bradford nodded, his expression unchanged. "And an airstrike to take out the SAM sites?" "The sites are dug in too close to our men. Danger close parameters exceeded by a factor of 3. We'd hit our own people." Bradford turned to the room. "Then we have no viable rescue option. Prepare a loss assessment report. Inform the secretary." The silence that followed wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the presence of doom. "There is another option, sir." Every head in the room turned toward the female voice. Captain Sarah Sam Mitchell stood in the doorway, still wearing her flight suit from the training exercise she'd been running when the emergency broke. At 32, she was in her prime as a fighter pilot, lean, athletic, with short blonde hair that framed intense blue eyes that seemed to calculate everything they saw. The name patch on her flight suit was partially obscured by her oxygen mask, which hung loose around her neck. Bradford's expression hardened. "Captain Mitchell, this briefing is classified. You're not authorized." "With respect, sir, I heard the distress call. Eagle Team includes several of my former wingmen." Her voice was calm, but carried an undercurrent of steel. "And I know that valley better than anyone in this room." Colonel Patterson stepped forward. "Sir, Captain Mitchell might have insight worth hearing." Bradford hesitated, then gave a curt nod. 2 minutes, Captain. Make them count." Sam moved to the tactical display, her movements efficient, precise. The daughter of the legendary Colonel Robert Mitchell, She had grown up on airbases around the world, military aviation coursing through her veins like jet fuel. But it wasn't her pedigree that had earned her the respect of the ground crews and fellow pilots. It was her uncanny ability to push aircraft to their absolute limits and bring them back again. Ashford Valley has a weakness, she said, manipulating the display to zoom in on a particular section of the ridgeline. Here, a narrow canyon cutting through the eastern ridge, too small to show up on standard topographical maps, but it's there. Bradford frowned. And how would you know about a feature that doesn't appear on our maps, Captain? Sam's eyes flicked momentarily to Colonel Patterson, then back to Bradford. Because my father found it, sir, 5 years ago, during his final mission. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Colonel Robert Mitchell's death was not a topic discussed in polite military company, especially not around Bradford, who had been the commanding officer on that fateful day. The official report cited catastrophic mechanical failure, but rumors had persisted. Rumors that made Bradford's jaw tighten whenever the incident was mentioned. That's irrelevant, Captain, Bradford said sharply. Your father's mission was in a completely different operational context. It was in exactly the same valley, sir. He was testing a new low-altitude infiltration route, a route that could get under those SAM radars. Sam's fingers danced across the display, highlighting a serpentine path through the terrain. An F-15E Strike Eagle can thread that canyon. I can deliver precision strikes on both SAM sites without endangering our men, create a corridor for helicopter extraction. Bradford's face darkened. That canyon can't be more than 100 feet wide in places. At the speeds you'd need to stay under radar, one micro-adjustment would put you into the rock face. I'm aware of the risks, sir. Then you should also be aware that I'm denying your request. The physics don't work, Captain. Even if this mystery canyon exists, no pilot could navigate it at combat speed. Sam stood straighter, her eyes never leaving Bradford's. My father could, and so can I. The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone present knew the unspoken accusation in her words, that Bradford had abandoned her father, left him to die in that same valley 5 years ago. Colonel Patterson cleared his throat. Sir, Captain Mitchell has the highest simulation scores in the wing. If anyone could pull this off, this discussion is over, Bradford cut him off. We will continue to explore conventional options. In the meantime, Captain Mitchell is restricted to base. Her security clearance for this operation is revoked. Sam opened her mouth to protest, but Colonel Patterson's slight headshake stopped her. She knew the game. This wasn't the end of the conversation, merely the public part of it. Dismissed, Captain, Bradford said. Sam saluted crisply, turned on her heel, and exited the command center. Only those who knew her well would have noticed the slight tremor in her hands, not from fear, but from the effort of containing her fury. Outside, the Arizona sun beat down with merciless intensity. Sam stood for a moment, eyes closed, face tilted up to the heat. The dog tags beneath her flight suit felt cool against her skin. Not her own, but her father's. She never flew without them. He always said you'd outfly him one day. Colonel Patterson had followed her out. His weathered face held the expression of a man trying to navigate between duty and conscience. Bradford's going to let them die, isn't he? Sam asked quietly. Patterson looked around to ensure they weren't overheard. He's following protocol. The mission parameters don't allow for the risk assessment you're proposing. Screw the parameters. There are 100 men out there. I know. Patterson's voice dropped even lower, which is why you need to be very careful about what you do next. Their eyes met in silent understanding. Patterson had been her father's best friend, had been the one to bring her the news of his death, had stood beside her at the funeral, while Bradford delivered a eulogy that rang hollow in both their ears. I never believed the official report, Sam said, about my father's crash. This isn't the place, Sam. He found something in that valley, something Bradford doesn't want anyone else to find. Patterson's expression gave nothing away, but his silence spoke volumes. Just be careful, he said finally. Bradford's been looking for an excuse to ground you permanently ever since you outperformed his golden boy in the combat trials. As if summoned by the reference, a tall figure approached from the direction of the hangars. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Ice Harrison moved with the swagger that came from being the base's top-rated pilot, or at least the top-rated male pilot. At 38, Harrison had the classic fighter jock look, square jaw, confident smile, and eyes that assessed everything as either a target or a conquest. Captain Mitchell, he nodded, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. I heard you volunteered for a suicide mission. Always trying to live up to Daddy's legacy, aren't you? Sam met his gaze evenly. I volunteered to save 100 Americans. What's your excuse for sitting this one out, Ice? Harrison's smile tightened. Following orders, Captain. Something you might want to try sometime. General Bradford has assigned me to lead the planning team for conventional options. And how's that going? Found a way to teleport them out yet? We're exploring all viable alternatives that don't involve pilot heroics and career suicide. Patterson stepped between them. Lieutenant Colonel, don't you have a planning session to attend? Harrison held Sam's gaze a moment longer, then nodded to Patterson. Colonel. He turned and walked away, posture perfect. Every inch the model officer. Don't let him get to you, Patterson murmured. He's been insufferable since you outflew him in the Crimson Flag exercises last year. He's the least of my concerns right now. Sam watched Harrison's retreating back. I need access to a jet, Frank. Patterson's expression grew grave. Sam, think about what you're saying. This isn't just about bending rules. This is direct insubordination during an active crisis. It's court-martial territory. And if I don't go, it's 100 dead Americans. Her voice was calm, resolved. You know I can make that canyon run. You've seen my simulation scores. Simulations aren't reality. No, reality is harder, but I've been practicing this specific flight path for 5 years. Patterson's eyebrows rose. What are you talking about? Sam glanced around, then lowered her voice. Come with me. There's something you need to see. 20 minutes later, they stood in Sam's small on-base apartment. Unlike the Spartan military quarters of most officers, her walls were covered with maps, satellite photos, and handwritten calculations. An entire section was dedicated to Ashford Valley, with a detailed 3D model constructed on her dining table. Patterson stared at the display in disbelief. You've been mapping the valley all this time? Sam ran her finger along a narrow passage in the model. After my father died, I requested all the data from his final flight. Bradford blocked it, of course, but I got enough fragments from maintenance records and flight recorder backups. He found this canyon, mapped it manually during training runs. That's why it doesn't show on standard maps. The walls are so steep that satellite imaging misses it. Why would your father be so interested in a hidden canyon? Sam turned to face him, her expression deadly serious. That's what I've been trying to figure out for 5 years. Whatever he found in that valley got him killed, Frank. And now it might get 100 more Americans killed. Patterson studied the model, professional curiosity warring with concern. Even if this canyon exists as you've mapped it, the flight parameters are extreme, the G-forces alone. I can handle 9 Gs, tested it in centrifuge training last month. 9? Patterson shook his head in disbelief. Sam, that's beyond what most male pilots can sustain without G-suits, and even with them, I've been training specifically for this. High G tolerance exercises, canyon run simulations. I've flown this route in my head 1,000 times. She tapped her temple. It's all up here. Patterson studied her with new eyes, suddenly understanding the rumors about her obsessive training regimen. The extra hours in the simulator, the specialized physical conditioning that had become her trademark. This isn't just about saving Eagle Team for you, is it? He asked quietly. It's about finishing what your father started. Sam's hand went unconsciously to the spot beneath her flight suit where her father's dog tags rested. Maybe. But does it matter why, if those men come home alive? Patterson was silent for a long moment, the weight of decades in uniform pressing on his shoulders. Finally, he sighed. What exactly would you need? Exactly. Relief washed over Sam's face, quickly replaced by focused determination. Access to an F-15E, overrides for the pre-flight authorization, and 30 minutes before anyone realizes I'm gone. This goes against everything in the rulebook, Sam. Some rules are worth breaking. She touched the small tattoo on her wrist, partially visible beneath her flight suit sleeve. Higher, faster, farther, her father's personal motto. Dad used to say that courage isn't following orders when they're easy. It's knowing when to follow your conscience when orders are wrong. Patterson's weathered face softened. He was a good man, your father. One of the best pilots I ever knew. He paused. Until you. The radio on his belt crackled to life. Bradford's voice came through, demanding Patterson's presence at the command center. Patterson clicked in acknowledgement, then turned back to Sam. Be at Hangar 6 in 40 minutes. I'll have Chief Martinez prepare your aircraft. Officially, it's for a maintenance check. His expression grew grave. But Sam, understand what you're risking. If you fail, I won't. If you fail, he continued firmly, it won't just be your career. It will be mine, Martinez's, and anyone else who helped you. And if you succeed, but Bradford connects the dots, it could still end the same way. Sam nodded, the weight of his words settling on her shoulders. I understand, and I wouldn't ask if I saw any other way. Patterson headed for the door, then paused. Your old man would be proud, he said softly, then left. Alone in her apartment, Sam moved to a small wooden box on her dresser. Inside lay her father's pilot wings and a photograph. Robert Mitchell standing beside his F-15, smiling broadly, arm around a teenage Faye who beamed with pride. She touched the image gently. I'm going back to the valley, Dad, she whispered. I'm going to finish what you started. 40 minutes later, Sam approached Hangar 6, her walk casual but purposeful, as if she were simply conducting routine business. She wore her flight suit with an easy confidence that deflected questions. The security guard at the hangar entrance barely glanced at her credentials before waving her through. Inside, Master Sergeant James Martinez waited beside an F-15E Strike Eagle. At 50, Martinez had been maintaining fighter aircraft since before Sam was born. His hands were calloused from decades of service, but no surgeon had more precise fingers when it came to aircraft systems. Captain, he nodded, his voice neutral, but his eyes conveying understanding. Your bird is prepped for maintenance evaluation. Full weapons and fuel load as requested. Oddly heavy for a maintenance run. Thank you, Chief. Sam conducted a visual inspection of the aircraft, running her hand along the fuselage with a mixture of reverence and familiarity. System status? Navigation computer has been loaded with your special parameters. Martinez handed her a small data chip. Backup copy, just in case. Primary and secondary communication systems checked. Countermeasures fully stocked. He leaned closer, voice dropping. Colonel Patterson told me the basics. My nephew is with Eagle Team. Whatever you're planning, bring them home. Sam nodded, slipping the chip into a secure pocket. That's the plan, Chief. One more thing. Martinez reached into his pocket and pulled out a small fabric patch. The ground crew wanted you to have this. Sam looked down at the patch in surprise. It showed an eagle with outstretched wings and the words, "When angels won't fly, devils must." The unofficial motto of pilots who took missions others deemed impossible. I can't take this, Chief. Not yet. Martinez pressed it into her hand. You'll earn it. Just come back so we can sew it on proper. The sound of approaching voices caused both of them to straighten. Martinez immediately began pointing at an engine component, his voice shifting to a professional briefing tone as several maintenance personnel entered the hangar. Sam climbed the ladder to the cockpit, her movements practiced and efficient. Settling into the seat, she began the pre-flight checklist, her hands dancing across switches and controls with intimate familiarity. The F-15E responded like a living thing, systems coming online one by one, the cockpit illuminating with the glow of displays and indicators. As she strapped in, she felt the reassuring pressure of her father's dog tags against her chest. A pre-mission ritual, touch the tags, then the small tattoo on her wrist, and whisper her father's words, higher, faster, farther. The radio crackled. Captain Mitchell, this is Tower. We show no flight plan filed for your aircraft. Please confirm your status. Sam toggled the comm switch. Tower, this is Mitchell. Conducting maintenance evaluation on runway approach systems. Colonel Patterson's authorization. Up a pause. Stand by, Captain. Sam's pulse quickened. Any delay could be fatal, not just for the mission, but for her career and everyone who had helped her. Then Patterson's voice came over the channel. Tower, this is Colonel Patterson. Captain Mitchell's maintenance flight is authorized. Standard pattern, 20-minute duration. Confirmed, Colonel. Captain Mitchell, you are cleared to taxi to runway 30. Roger that, Tower. Taxiing to 30. The powerful engines rumbled to life as Sam eased the throttle forward. The massive aircraft began to move, rolling out of the hangar and onto the taxiway. Through the canopy, Sam could see Martinez watching, offering a subtle salute as she passed. As she aligned with the runway, Sam made a final check of her systems. The navigation computer showed her planned route, a seemingly routine departure that would transition to a nap-of-the-earth approach to Ashford Valley once she was beyond radar coverage. The weapon systems were hot, missiles and cannons ready for the fight she knew was coming. Tower, Strike Eagle 42, ready for takeoff. Strike Eagle 42, you are cleared for takeoff. Winds 350 at 8 knots. Sam pushed the throttle forward. feeling the surge of power as the F-15E accelerated down the runway. The desert landscape blurred outside her canopy. And then, with a gentle backward pressure on the stick, she was airborne, the ground falling away beneath her. Banking into her initial climb, Sam kept to the authorized flight pattern until she reached 5,000 feet. Then, with a quick glance at her tactical display, she made her move. Pushing the stick forward, she dropped to just 300 feet above the desert floor and banked hard to the east, directly toward Ashford Valley. The radio erupted almost immediately. "Strike Eagle 4-2, this is Tower. You are deviating from your authorized flight path. Return to pattern immediately." Sam switched to the encrypted channel Patterson had provided. "Frank, I'm committed. Going radio silent on primary channels." Patterson's voice came through, tense but resolved. "Understood. Bradford knows something's happening. You have maybe 10 minutes before they scramble interceptors." "Copy that. I'll be in the canyon by then." Sam switched off her primary communication systems and activated her terrain-following radar. The Arizona desert streaked beneath her at over 500 miles per hour, the aircraft hugging the contours of the land, using ridges and valleys to mask her approach from distant radar installations. Inside the cockpit, Sam was one with the machine. Every vibration, every subtle shift in the aircraft's handling translated through the stick to her hands, through the seat to her body. This wasn't just flying. This was communion with an extension of herself. Her father had taught her that, how to feel an aircraft's soul. A memory surfaced. She was 12, sitting in the cockpit of her father's parked F-15, hands gripping the control stick. "It's not about forcing the plane to do what you want," Robert Mitchell had explained, his voice patient, passionate. "It's about asking it, suggesting the path. The best pilots don't fight the aircraft, they dance with it." Now, 20 years later, Sam was dancing indeed, a high-speed ballet mere feet above the jagged terrain, every movement precise, every decision potentially her last. Her navigation system chimed, warning of her approach to the Ashford Valley perimeter. She reduced altitude further, skimming just 100 feet above the ground. The G-force pressed against her body as she maneuvered, but years of specialized training had conditioned her to withstand pressures that would cause most pilots to black out. Ahead, the first ridgeline of Ashford Valley rose from the desert floor like a fortress wall. According to her father's notes, the hidden canyon entrance was nestled between two distinctive rock formations, a spire that resembled a hand reaching skyward and a flat-top mesa that local troops had nicknamed the Anvil. There, the landmarks appeared exactly as her father had described them. Between them, almost invisible unless you knew exactly where to look, was a narrow gap in the ridgeline. Sam adjusted her approach vector, aligning the aircraft with the gap. At her current speed, she would have less than a second to make any final adjustments before commitment. Too high, and she'd be exposed to the SAM radars waiting on the other side. Too low, and she'd impact the rising terrain. The gap rushed toward her, growing from a sliver to a defined passage. Sam felt time slow, her senses hyper-aware, her body and the aircraft moving as one organism. She made a final micro-adjustment, and then she was in, threading the massive fighter jet through an opening barely twice its wingspan. The canyon walls shot up on either side, towering cliffs of red sandstone that seemed to scrape against her wingtips. The passage twisted left, then right, forcing Sam to bank at angles that pushed the aircraft's structural tolerances. The G-forces mounted, 5, 6, 7 Gs pressing her into her seat, threatening to drain the blood from her brain. Sam executed the specialized breathing technique she had developed during her training, tensing her lower body muscles to prevent blood from pooling, keeping her vision clear despite forces that would incapacitate most humans. The canyon grew narrower, requiring even more precise handling. A warning tone sounded, the navigation system alerting her to a particularly tight section ahead. Sam prepared mentally, visualizing the maneuver she would need to execute. The canyon wall loomed, seeming to rush toward her port wing. With practiced precision, she rolled the aircraft 45 degrees and slipped sideways through the gap, the belly of the jet nearly scraping the canyon floor. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed the F-15E wouldn't fit. But then she was through, rolling level again, her breathing controlled despite the adrenaline surging through her system. The canyon opened slightly, giving her precious seconds to check her tactical display. She was past the first ridge of Ashford Valley, having completely bypassed the radar coverage that protected its perimeter. According to her intelligence, the first SAM site would be positioned on the northern ridge, overlooking the valley floor where Eagle Team was trapped. A new sound cut through her concentration, a warning tone indicating that her communication system was receiving an encrypted transmission on the Emergency Special Operations frequency. Sam hesitated, then activated the receiver. Repeat. Any air assets. This is Thunder Actual. We are pinned down at coordinates 3479 or 2. Enemy forces closing from 3 directions. We have wounded. Cannot hold position. The voice belonged to Major Daniel Cooper, Eagle Team leader, and someone Sam knew well. They had trained together years ago before he transferred to Special Operations. The strain in his voice was evident, even through the static. Sam toggled her transmitter. Thunder Actual, this is Strike Eagle 42, authentication code Sierra Whiskey 997. I am inbound to your position with air support, ETA 3 minutes. A stunned silence. Then, 42, this is Thunder Actual, authentication confirmed. Be advised, there are 2 active SAM sites with overlapping coverage. They've already downed 1 recon drone. Approach is not recommended. Repeat, not recommended. Roger your warning, Thunder Actual. I'm coming in via the East Canyon. SAM sites won't see me until I'm on top of them. Prepare your men for extraction once I've cleared the air defenses. Another voice cut in, deeper, authoritative. This is General Bradford on command override. Captain Mitchell, you are ordered to abort your mission immediately. Return to base for disciplinary action. Sam felt a cold fury rise within her. Bradford had patched into the Special Operations frequency, a breach of protocol that put the ground team at risk just to reassert his authority. With respect, sir, I'm already committed to the approach. Aborting now would expose me to enemy fire without achieving the mission objective. This is a direct order, Captain. You are... Sam switched channels, cutting off Bradford's voice. She couldn't afford the distraction, not with what lay ahead. The canyon was widening, approaching its junction with the main valley. In moments, she would be exposed, and it would be time to strike. The first SAM site would come into view as soon as she cleared the canyon mouth. According to her father's notes, it would be positioned on a plateau to the north, with optimal firing angles across the valley. She armed her first HARM anti-radiation missile, designed specifically to target radar installations. The canyon walls fell away as she burst into the open valley. Instantly, warning alarms blared in the cockpit. Enemy radar had locked onto her aircraft. Sam kicked in the afterburners, the F-15E leaping forward with explosive acceleration as she simultaneously launched chaff countermeasures and banked hard right. There, on the northern ridge. The SAM installation was exactly where expected, its radar dish already swiveling to track her. Sam lined up her shot, the targeting computer confirming lock on. She pressed the trigger, feeling the aircraft shudder slightly as the HARM missile dropped from its hardpoint and ignited, streaking toward the target. The missile impacted with a brilliant flash, the SAM radar disintegrating in a fireball. But Sam had no time to celebrate. Her threat warning system was already tracking the second SAM site, this one to the west. She banked hard, pulling the aircraft into a tight turn that pressed her body with crushing G-force. The second SAM site fired. Sam's warning system screamed as a missile locked onto her heat signature. Instinct and training took over. She cut the afterburners, deployed more chaff, and executed a split-S maneuver, inverting the aircraft and pulling down into a steep dive, forcing the missile to attempt to follow her rapidly changing vector. The surface-to-air missile overshot, unable to match her extreme maneuver. Sam pulled out of the dive mere hundreds of feet above the valley floor, then climbed rapidly, lining up the second SAM site in her sights. Her finger tightened on the trigger, ready to launch her remaining HARM missile. Before she could fire, a new contact appeared on her radar. Another aircraft, approaching fast from the direction of the base. The IFF transponder identified it as friendly. Another F-15E. For a moment, Sam thought Bradford had sent interceptors to force her back, but the aircraft was flying a direct approach toward the combat zone, not pursuing her. Her radio crackled again, this time on the squadron tactical frequency. Strike Eagle 42, this is Strike Eagle 37. Thought you might want some company on this court-martial tour. Sam recognized the voice immediately. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Ice Harrison was the last person she'd expected to follow her into the situation. 37, this is 42. You're not cleared for this operation. Return to base. Harrison's chuckle came through the radio. That's funny coming from you, Mitchell. I've got a lock on the Western SAM site, taking the shot. Before Sam could respond, Harrison's aircraft launched its own HARM missile. The weapon streaked across the valley and struck the second SAM installation with devastating accuracy. The threat warning alarms in Sam's cockpit went silent as the radar signature disappeared. SAM sites neutralized, Harrison reported, his voice oddly subdued. Now, do you want to tell me how you found a way into this valley that doesn't exist on any map? Sam banked her aircraft, bringing it alongside Harrison's at a safe distance. Family secret. What are you doing here, Ice? Last I checked, you were Bradford's golden boy. There was a pause before he answered. Let's just say I couldn't sit back while you had all the fun. Besides, 100 Americans needed help. That trumps career considerations, It was as close to an admission of respect as she was likely to get from Harrison. Sam accepted it for what it was. Thunder Actual, this is Strike Eagle 4-2. SAM sites neutralized. Air corridor is clear for extraction. Send coordinates for danger close air support if needed. Major Cooper's voice came through stronger now. 4-2, this is one hell of a surprise. We've got enemy forces closing from the north and east ridges. Grid coordinates to follow for danger close support. Be advised, they're within 100 meters of our position. Standard protocol prohibited airstrikes within 200 meters of friendly forces. What Cooper was asking was technically beyond authorized parameters. But then, this entire mission was beyond authorized parameters. Copy that, Thunder Actual. Preparing for danger close support. Mark your positions with smoke. Green smoke began to rise from the center of the valley floor as the trapped Special Operations team marked their location. Simultaneously, muzzle flashes appeared along the ridgelines as enemy forces intensified their attack on the Americans. Sam switched to her aircraft's cannon, the massive 20mm Vulcan that could deliver devastating firepower with surgical precision. For the dangerous task of providing close air support with friendlies so near, the cannon was preferable to bombs or missiles. Harrison, take the eastern ridge. I'll handle the north. Maintain altitude of at least 500 feet to avoid small arms fire. Copy that, eastern ridge is mine. The two F-15Es split, each banking toward their assigned targets. Sam lined up her approach on the northern ridge, where enemy forces had established what appeared to be heavy machine gun positions. Through her targeting system, she could see muzzle flashes as they fired down on the American position. Sam squeezed the trigger. The Vulcan cannon roared to life, spitting out 6,000 rounds per minute, the aircraft vibrating with its power. She swept the cannon fire along the ridgeline, methodically eliminating the machine gun nests one by one. The precision required was immense. Too high, and she'd miss the targets. Too low, and she risked hitting the Americans just 100 meters away. Across the valley, Harrison was executing a similar attack run on the eastern ridge, his cannon fire silencing enemy positions with clinical efficiency. Between them, they were creating the corridor that would allow helicopter extraction to proceed. Thunder Actual, northern ridge is clear, Sam reported. What's your wounded status? 4-2. We have 8 wounded, 3 critical. Need immediate medevac. Roger that. Extraction helicopters should be inbound now that the air defense threat is neutralized. Even as she spoke, Sam's radar picked up new contacts approaching from the south. A flight of Black Hawk helicopters, no doubt scrambled once Patterson had convinced command that the SAM threat was eliminated. The extraction was finally underway. Sam continued to circle the valley, providing overwatch as the first Black Hawk descended toward the green smoke. Below, she could see the special operators moving their wounded toward the landing zone, maintaining a defensive perimeter as they went. The first helicopter touched down, rotors whipping up a storm of dust. Through her canopy, Sam could see the wounded being loaded aboard, medics rushing to help them. Then her threat warning system screamed to life again. A third SAM site, one that hadn't appeared on any intelligence reports, had activated on the western ridge. Its radar was already locked onto the hovering Black Hawk, missile launch imminent. There was no time for consultation, no time for plans. Sam acted on pure instinct, pushing her aircraft into a steep dive directly toward the SAM site. At the same time, she launched her last countermeasures and keyed her radio. Black Hawk, immediate takeoff, SAM launch imminent. Harrison, cover the extraction. I'm taking out the new SAM site. The Black Hawk pilot reacted instantly, pulling power and lifting off even as some of the wounded were still being secured inside. Sam continued her dive, drawing the SAM site's attention to her aircraft instead of the vulnerable helicopter. The missile launched, streaking towards Sam's F-15E. She held her course for another second, ensuring the missile committed to her, then executed a high G-brake turn, simultaneously dropping to treetop level and deploying her remaining chaff. The missile tracked the chaff, detonating harmlessly above the valley. But now Sam was out of countermeasures, her aircraft exposed to the still active SAM site. She had one option left, a direct attack with her cannon. The SAM site was already reloading, preparing for another shot. Sam lined up her approach, pushing the F-15E to its limits as she skimmed the valley floor. The G-forces were crushing now, vision tunneling as blood struggled to reach her brain. Using every technique she'd practiced, she fought to remain conscious, knowing that a moment's lapse would be fatal. The SAM sight grew in her targeting display. Sam squeezed the trigger, the cannon blazing again. Tracers streaked toward the target, impacting the launcher just as it was preparing to fire. The resulting explosion lit up the western ridge, debris raining down as Sam pulled up sharply, clearing the ridgeline by mere feet. "SAM site destroyed," she reported, her voice strained from the G-forces. "Extraction corridor secure." The remaining Black Hawks were already descending, touching down in sequence to load the rest of Eagle Team. Sam and Harrison maintained a protective circle above, ready to respond to any new threats. One by one, the helicopters lifted off, heavy with their precious human cargo. The last Black Hawk, carrying Major Cooper and the final elements of Eagle Team, gave a wing waggle of appreciation as it cleared the valley floor. Harrison's voice came over the radio, uncharacteristically respectful. "Captain Mitchell, that was the finest flying I've ever witnessed. Your father would be proud." The mention of her father sent a jolt through Sam's system. In the heat of combat, she had almost forgotten the other reason she had come to this valley. Whatever her father had discovered here, whatever had led to his death, was still hidden somewhere among these ridges and ravines. But that was a mystery for another day. Right now, 100 American warriors were heading home alive because she had trusted her instincts and her training over regulations. "Thanks for the assist, Ice," she replied. "Though I'm curious, what made you follow me? Last I checked, your career path didn't include suicidal rescue missions against direct orders." There was a long pause before Harrison answered. "Let's just say I had a moment of clarity. Maybe watching you risk everything made me reconsider my priorities." Sam checked her fuel gauge. The intense maneuvering had burned through her reserves faster than anticipated. "We should head back. I'm at bingo fuel." "Roger that, though I'm not sure what kind of welcome will be waiting." As they banked their aircraft toward the hidden canyon that would take them back to Edwards Air Force Base, Sam felt a strange mixture of emotions: elation at the successful rescue, pride in her flying, concern about the consequences that surely awaited, and underlying it all, a renewed determination to uncover the truth about her father's last mission. Whatever General Bradford was hiding, she was now one step closer to exposing it. The valley had nearly become a grave for 100 Americans today. 5 years ago, it had become her father's tomb. The connection couldn't be coincidence. As the canyon walls closed around her aircraft once more, Sam touched the spot where her father's dog tags rested against her skin. "Higher, faster, farther," she whispered, but this time she added words of her own. And this time, the truth. Behind her, the valley that had witnessed both tragedy and triumph grew small in the distance, its secrets still buried beneath rock and sand, waiting to be uncovered by a daughter who refused to accept comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. The battle was won, but her personal war was just beginning. The silence in the debriefing room pressed down like a physical weight. 4 hours had passed since Captain Sarah Mitchell and Lieutenant Colonel Michael Harrison had returned from their unauthorized mission to Ashford Valley. 4 hours of isolation in separate rooms, while the chain of command determined their fate. 4 hours for the adrenaline to fade, leaving only bone-deep exhaustion and the growing realization of what they had risked. Sam sat motionless at the steel table, still in her sweat-stained flight suit. Her blonde hair was matted where the helmet had pressed against her scalp, and dark circles had formed beneath her eyes. The only movement in the room was her right thumb, unconsciously tracing the outline of her father's dog tags through the fabric of her suit. The door opened with a decisive click. Brigadier General Thomas Bradford entered, followed by 2 military police officers who stationed themselves on either side of the door. Bradford's face was a study in controlled fury, jaw clenched, eyes cold as winter steel. He carried a thin folder which he placed precisely in the center of the table before taking a seat opposite Sam. "Captain Mitchell." His voice was measured, betraying nothing. "You directly violated orders. You stole military equipment. You compromised operational security. You endangered yourself and Lieutenant Colonel Harrison. By any measure of military justice, your career ended today." Sam met his gaze without flinching. 100 men came home alive, sir. "That's not the point, Captain." "With respect, sir, that's exactly the point." Bradford's eyes narrowed. "You think results justify insubordination. This isn't about the outcome, Captain. This is about the chain of command, about discipline, about order. It's about leaving men to die when there was a viable alternative." Bradford slammed his palm on the table, the sound cracking through the room like a gunshot. "There was no viable alternative. There was only an untested theory based on your father's incomplete data and your own obsession." The word hung in the air between them. Obsession. How many times had Sam heard that whispered behind her back over the years? The daughter who couldn't let go. The pilot who pushed too hard. The officer who asked too many questions about a classified mission that had already been investigated and closed. "My obsession saved 100 American lives today," she said quietly. "And it would have saved my father 5 years ago if someone had listened then." Bradford's face darkened further. "Your father's mission was entirely different. The situations aren't comparable. Same valley, same SAM sites, same refusal to authorize an extraction." Sam leaned forward slightly. "What was my father really doing there, General? What did he find that was worth leaving him to die?" For a fraction of a second, something flickered behind Bradford's eyes. Uncertainty, perhaps, or something deeper. Then it was gone, replaced by the hard mask of command. "This interview is over." He stood abruptly. "You are confined to quarters pending formal charges. Your flight status is revoked effective immediately. You will surrender your credentials to the MPs outside." As he moved toward the door, Sam spoke again. "The third SAM site wasn't on any of our intelligence reports, General. Why is that?" Bradford froze, his back to her. That valley was supposed to be a training ground, yet it had 3 state-of-the-art surface-to-air missile systems perfectly positioned to create a kill box. What kind of training exercise requires that level of lethality against our own forces? Bradford turned slowly. "You're treading into dangerous territory, Captain." "I've been in dangerous territory all day, sir. I'm getting used to it." Bradford studied her for a long moment, then nodded to the MPs. "Escort Captain Mitchell to her quarters. Full security protocols with no communications, no visitors." As the MPS moved to either side of Sam, Bradford added, "One final thing, Captain. Any attempt to discuss today's events or your theories about your father's mission will be considered a breach of national security. Is that clear?" Sam stood, back straight, eyes locked on Bradford's. "Crystal clear, sir." The walk across the base to her quarters felt like a public execution. Personnel stopped and stared as Sam passed between her 2 escorts. Word had already spread about the unauthorized rescue mission, and eyes followed her progress with a mixture of awe, sympathy, and, in some cases, unmistakable pride. No one spoke, but several officers rendered subtle, almost imperceptible salutes as she passed. The MPs delivered her to her apartment door, verified that all communication devices were confiscated, and stationed themselves outside. The lock engaged with a final sounding click, leaving Sam alone with the consequences of her actions. She moved to the window, watching as the desert sunset painted Edwards Air Force Base in hues of amber and gold. Somewhere on this base, the men of Eagle Team were reuniting with their families, embracing loved ones they had thought they might never see again. Somewhere, Harrison was facing his own interrogation, his career likely in tatters because he had chosen to follow her lead instead of Bradford's orders. And somewhere, the truth about her father's death remained buried, protected by layers of classification and the power of men like Bradford. Sam turned from the window and surveyed her apartment. The maps and models of Ashford Valley that had dominated her dining table were gone, confiscated during her absence. 5 years of research, of obsessive preparation, stripped away in an afternoon. But they hadn't taken everything. Moving to her bedroom, Sam knelt beside her bed and reached beneath the frame, fingers searching for the small metal box secured to the underside of the bed frame with magnetic strips. It detached with a soft click. Inside lay a weathered leather-bound journal, her father's flight log, recovered from his personal effects after his death. The official investigation had overlooked it, dismissing it as a personal memento rather than potential evidence. Sam opened it carefully, flipping to the final entries. Her father's handwriting grew increasingly urgent in the final pages, his normally precise script becoming hurried, almost frantic. Third sweep of Ashford complete. Confirmed unusual activity in Western Quadrant. Observed unmarked vehicles entering hidden entrance. Surveillance suggests non-standard weapons testing. Required clear visual confirmation before reporting. Bradford insists operation remains classified, even from command. Uncomfortable with parameters. Making final run tomorrow. The next day's entry was brief, written just before his final flight. Photographic evidence secured. Unmistakable proof of unauthorized weapons system. Clear violation of treaties. Bradford ordered all recordings disabled for mission, but installed personal backup system. Evidence cache established at marker point Echo 7. If anything happens, coordinates are... The entry ended abruptly. Robert Mitchell had never returned from that mission to complete his thought. But the mention of marker point Echo 7 was new information. Sam had read this journal dozens of times, but had always assumed Echo 7 referred to some military designation she couldn't access. Now, with fresh eyes and the experience of actually flying her father's route, something clicked. She closed her eyes, mentally retracing the canyon flight. Echo 7 wasn't a military designation. It was a pilot's landmark. Her father had often used such personal markers in his navigation, naming distinctive terrain features with his own phonetic code. And she had seen it today, a rock formation resembling the letter E, visible only from a specific angle within the canyon, at the 7th major turn. Her father had hidden evidence there, evidence that might explain his death, evidence that Bradford had gone to great lengths to ensure was never found. A soft knock at her window startled her from her thoughts. Sam looked up to see the weathered face of Colonel Frank Patterson peering through the glass. She quickly stashed the journal and moved to unlatch the window. "Frank, what are you doing? There are MPS outside my door." Patterson slipped through the window with surprising agility for a man of his age. "Which is why I came in through the back way. They've got the front covered, but apparently forgot that pilots know how to use ladders." His attempt at humor couldn't mask the concern in his eyes. "I don't have much time. They're moving you in the morning." "Moving me? Where?" "Nellis Air Force Base for the court-martial proceedings. Bradford is pushing for maximum charges. Theft of military equipment, insubordination, reckless endangerment. He wants to make an example of you." Sam absorbed this with a grim nod. "And Harrison? Strangely, he's getting off lighter. Reprimand and reassignment, but no criminal charges. Word is that Bradford can't afford to lose his star pilot, especially to a court-martial." "What about Eagle Team? Are they all safe?" Patterson's expression softened. "All accounted for, all alive. 8 wounded, but they'll recover. Major Cooper has been asking to see you, but Bradford has the whole team under a gag order." He hesitated. "Sam, there's something else you should know. The Pentagon sent investigators. They're not just looking into your actions. They're examining the entire Ashford Valley operation. Something about unauthorized weapons testing." Sam felt a jolt of validation. My father was right. "What are you talking about?" She quickly told Patterson about the journal entries, about Echo 7, about her father's hidden evidence. Patterson listened with growing alarm. "Sam, if Bradford finds out you know about this, he'll what? Court-martial me, end my career? He's already doing that." "There are worse things than losing your career." Patterson's voice dropped. "Your father discovered something dangerous enough that someone was willing to let him die for it. Don't make the same mistake." It's not a mistake if it exposes the truth." Patterson sighed, recognizing the familiar stubborn determination that both Mitchell shared. "I can't talk you out of this, can I?" "Would you have tried to talk my father out of it?" "I did try," Patterson admitted quietly. "The night before his final mission. We argued about it. That's why I couldn't let you go alone today. I couldn't fail both Mitchells." The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with years of unspoken guilt. Sam reached out and squeezed Patterson's arm gently. "You didn't fail him, Frank. And you didn't fail me. You gave me the chance to finish what he started." Patterson checked his watch. "I need to go before they change the guard rotation. Is there anything you need?" Sam thought for a moment. "Information. If I'm going to find my father's evidence cache, I need to know exactly what's happening in that valley. Can you get me the after-action reports from today's mission? Especially any imagery of the Western Ridge?" "That's highly classified material, Sam." So is whatever my father died to expose. Patterson hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. I'll see what I can do. But Sam, please be careful. Bradford has powerful friends. This goes beyond a rescue mission or even your father's death. There's something bigger happening. After Patterson left, Sam returned to the window, staring out at the darkening sky. The stars were emerging, cold and distant over the desert landscape. Somewhere out there, in the twisting confines of Ashford Valley, lay answers that had cost her father his life, answers that might yet cost her own. She touched the dog tags beneath her flight suit. I'm not giving up, Dad, she whispered to the night. Not when we're this close. The night passed in fitful bursts of sleep interrupted by vivid dreams, flying through the canyon again, but this time finding her father's crashed jet, his body still in the cockpit, eyes open and accusing. In the dreams, he kept saying the same thing. You saw it too. You know what's there. But what had she seen? The third Sam site, certainly. That was suspicious enough. But was there something else? Some detail her conscious mind had registered but not processed amid the chaos of combat. She was still pondering this when the MPs arrived at dawn to escort her to the transport plane. They were coldly professional, neither friendly nor hostile, simply executing orders. As they led her across the tarmac toward a waiting C-21 transport, Sam caught a glimpse of Harrison standing near one of the hangars, watching her departure. Their eyes met briefly across the distance. He offered no salute, no nod, no gesture of acknowledgement, but his presence itself felt like a statement. The flight to Nellis was brief and silent. Upon arrival, Sam was processed into officers' quarters that were comfortable, but clearly designed for containment. Ground floor, reinforced windows, surveillance cameras discreetly positioned in the hallway. The message was clear. She might not be in a cell, but she was certainly a prisoner. As evening approached, a knock at her door revealed a young airman delivering a meal tray. Tucked beneath the plate was a folded piece of paper. Once alone, Sam carefully unfolded it to find a handwritten note in Patterson's distinctive scrawl. Dinner at 1900 in the officer's mess. Old friend waiting. Watch your 6. At 1900 hours precisely, Sam was escorted to the officer's mess, where she was surprised to find herself permitted to enter unaccompanied. The large dining hall was sparsely populated, with most officers seemingly occupied elsewhere. She scanned the room, wondering who Patterson's old friend might be. Captain Mitchell? The voice came from a corner table where a man in civilian clothes sat alone. He was in his 50s, with silver hair cut military short despite the civilian attire, and eyes that had seen too much of the world's darker corners. It took Sam a moment to place him. Richard Warner, formerly Colonel Warner, once her father's commanding officer before his retirement 5 years ago, shortly after her father's death. Sir, she acknowledged, approaching his table. I didn't expect to see you here. Sit down, Captain, and it's just Richard now. I left the service behind. Sam sat opposite him, instantly alert. Warner had been a legend in Air Force Special Operations, a man whose reputation for integrity was matched only by his tactical brilliance. His sudden retirement had been a source of speculation, coming as it did on the heels of several high-profile missions, including her father's final flight. Frank reached out, Warner said, answering her unspoken question. Said you might need some perspective. Did he tell you what happened? Enough! Warner sipped from a coffee mug, his eyes never leaving hers. You flew an unauthorized mission into restricted airspace, engaged enemy forces without clearance, and saved 100 American lives in the process. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Your father would have been proud. Bradford doesn't see it that way. Bradford never does. Something hard entered Warner's voice. He sees the world in terms of control. Control of information, control of operations, control of narrative. Your actions disrupted that control. It was the right thing to do. I know. Warner set down his mug. Just like your father was right, 5 years ago. Sam felt her pulse quicken. You know what he found. I suspected. He came to me the night before his final mission, told me he had concerns about activity in Ashford Valley. Said Bradford was running some kind of black operation there, something off the books. I advised him to go through proper channels, but my father was stubborn. Warner nodded. He insisted on getting hard evidence first. Said he'd installed a personal recording system on his aircraft to document whatever he found. The next day, his jet crashed due to catastrophic mechanical failure. The quotation marks were audible in his tone. No flight recorder data was recovered. Bradford led the investigation himself and shut it down within a week. And you just accepted that? Sam couldn't keep the accusation from her voice. No. Warner's eyes flashed. I pushed for a proper investigation. 3 days later, I was called to Washington, handed early retirement papers, and strongly encouraged to sign them. The alternative was a series of allegations that would have ended with more than just my career in ruins. They threatened you, not just me, my family, my legacy, everything I'd built over 30 years of service. Warner leaned forward, voice dropping. The system protects itself, Captain. Bradford is just a cog in a bigger machine. Whatever is happening at Ashford Valley, it has protection from the highest levels. My father found evidence. He hid it somewhere in the valley. If I could find it. You can't go back there, not now. The security has been doubled since your little stunt. The entire area is under lockdown. Sam felt frustration rising. So we just let it go? Let them get away with whatever they're doing? Let my father's death mean nothing? Warner studied her for a long moment. Your father believed in doing what's right, regardless of consequences. So do I. So do you, evidently. He slid a small data drive across the table, concealing the movement beneath a napkin. This contains satellite imagery of Ashford Valley taken over the past 5 years. I still have friends in intelligence who owe me favors. Study it carefully. Look for patterns, changes in the landscape. Whatever they're hiding, it's there. Sam palmed the drive discreetly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This path you're on, it's dangerous. Not just to your career, but to your life. Warner stood, preparing to leave. One more thing. Bradford isn't working alone. Watch for a man named Bennett. Edward Bennett. Officially, he's a defense contractor specializing in weapons testing. Unofficially, he's got connections that make Bradford look like a small-time player. Bennett, Sam repeated, committing the name to memory. Warner nodded. Good luck, Captain. Your father was a good man. He deserved better than he got. He paused, then added quietly, So do you. After Warner departed, Sam remained at the table, thoughts racing. For the first time since her father's death, she had confirmation from a reliable source that her suspicions weren't merely the product of grief or obsession. Something was happening in Ashford Valley, something significant enough to kill for, to threaten for, to destroy careers over. When she finally returned to her quarters, escorted by an MP who remained respectfully silent throughout the walk, Sam found another surprise waiting. Sitting on her bed was a file folder containing the after-action reports Patterson had promised. Satellite imagery of Ashford Valley taken immediately after the rescue mission, including detailed scans of the western ridge where the third SAM site had been located. She spread the images across the bed, studying them intently. The SAM site she had destroyed was clearly visible, a blackened crater marking its former position. But it was what lay beyond the site that caught her attention. A narrow fissure in the cliff face, partially obscured by the angle of the image, but unmistakably artificial. A tunnel entrance, carefully camouflaged to blend with the natural rock formations. Sam switched to the data drive Warner had provided, loading the historical satellite imagery onto her tablet. Over the past 5 years, that section of the ridge had seen significant activity, though carefully disguised. Comparing images taken months apart revealed subtle changes. The widening of an access road, the appearance and disappearance of temporary structures, the gradual expansion of what appeared to be a concealed facility built directly into the mountainside. This, she realized with growing certainty, was what her father had discovered. Not just the hidden canyon route, but whatever lay beyond that tunnel entrance, whatever weapon system was being tested in violation of treaties, as her father's journal had suggested. She was so absorbed in the imagery that she almost missed the soft knock at her door. Hastily gathering the materials and hiding them beneath her mattress, she moved to answer. The face that greeted her was the last one she expected. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Harrison stood in her doorway, still in his flight suit, looking as if he hadn't slept in days. Harrison, what are you doing here? I thought you were at Edwards. He glanced down the hallway to ensure they weren't overheard. I requested transfer to the investigative team at Nellis. Bradford approved it, thinks I'm here to testify against you. A wry smile touched his lips. He's wrong about a lot of things. Sam studied him warily. Why would you help me? Last I checked, we weren't exactly friends. We weren't, Harrison agreed. But that was before I saw you fly that canyon. Before I watched you risk everything to save those men. He hesitated. And before I found out what's really happening in Ashford Valley. You know something? Harrison nodded grimly. I overheard Bradford on a secure call after we got back. He was talking to someone named Bennett. Edward Bennett? Sam's pulse quickened. You know him? I know of him. Defense contractor with high-level connections. Well, he and Bradford are panicking. They keep talking about the asset being compromised, about needing to accelerate the timeline. Harrison's eyes were troubled. Bradford ordered the entire valley swept for something called Mitchell's package. I think your father hid something there, something they never found. Echo 7, Sam murmured. What? Nothing. She wasn't ready to share everything, not even with Harrison's apparent change of heart. Why are you telling me this? Why risk your career? Harrison was silent for a moment. Because I was wrong about you, he finally said. All this time, I thought you were just riding your father's reputation, taking risks to prove something. But out there in that valley, that was the finest flying I've ever seen. The bravest thing I've ever witnessed. He met her eyes directly. And because I think your father was murdered for what he discovered. And I won't be part of covering that up. The admission hung between them, reshaping their relationship in an instant. Not quite friends, not quite allies, but united by something more powerful than either, a shared commitment to truth. So what's our next move? Harrison asked. Sam considered the question carefully. I need to get back to that valley, to Echo 7. Harrison shook his head. Impossible. Security's tripled since our little adventure. Full radar coverage, drone patrols, ground teams, no way in or out without authorization. Then we need authorization. From who? Bradford controls the airspace, and he's the last person who'd let you anywhere near Ashford again. Sam felt a plan forming, tenuous, but possible. Not from Bradford, from someone higher, someone with the authority to investigate potential violations of weapons treaties. You're talking about going over Bradford's head. To who? The Joint Chiefs? Higher, the Congressional Oversight Committee on Military Operations. Sam saw Harrison's skepticism and pressed on. My father documented evidence of illegal weapons testing. If we can prove that, if we can show that Bradford is covering up activities that violate international treaties, the committee would have to intervene. That's a big if, Mitchell. We don't have your father's evidence yet. But we know where to look. And we have these. She retrieved the satellite images from beneath her mattress, showing him the concealed facility in the Western Ridge. Something is happening there. Something important enough to kill for. We just need someone with the authority to look into it officially. Harrison studied the images, his expression thoughtful. I might know someone. A congressman on the committee. He was my father's roommate at the academy. They stayed close over the years. Hope flickered to life in Sam's chest. Can you contact him, without Bradford finding out? I can try. But Mitchell, you need to understand, even if we get the committee involved, even if they launch an investigation, Bradford and his friends will fight back. They'll discredit you, discredit your father. They'll paint you as unstable, obsessed with conspiracy theories about your father's death. Let them try. Sam felt a cold determination settling over her. I've got satellite imagery, anomalous SAM sites where none should exist, and 100 witnesses who saw what happened out there. The truth is on our side. Harrison nodded slowly. All right, I'll reach out to Congressman Reynolds, see if he'll meet with us. But we need to be careful, very careful. After Harrison left, Sam returned to the satellite imagery, studying every inch of the valley with renewed purpose. She was no longer alone in her quest. She had allies now, information, a path forward. For the first time in 5 years, the possibility of justice for her father seemed within reach. But as she traced the outline of the hidden facility with her finger, a nagging doubt remained. If Bradford and Bennett were as powerful as Warner suggested, if they had connections reaching to the highest levels, would even congressional oversight be enough to expose them? Or would she simply be making herself a target, as her father had done? The answer came to her with sudden clarity. It didn't matter. Some fights were worth the risk, regardless of the odds. Her father had understood that. Now she did too. Sam reached for her father's dog tags, drawing strength from the worn metal as she had so many times before. I'm coming, Dad, she whispered. I'm bringing it all to light. whatever it takes. The next morning dawned clear and cold, a crisp desert winter settling over Nellis Air Force Base. Sam woke early, her mind cycling through possibilities and plans. The formal charges against her would be filed today, beginning a process that would likely end her military career. But if she could reach the Congressional Oversight Committee first, if she could present her evidence and concerns, the dynamics might shift in her favor. A knock at her door revealed a stern-faced officer she didn't recognize. "Captain Mitchell, I'm Major William Hayes from the Judge Advocate General's office. I've been assigned as your defense counsel for the upcoming court-martial proceedings." Sam invited him in, studying him carefully. Major Hayes was in his 40s, with a precise manner and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "I understand the charges will be filed today," Sam said as they sat at the small table in her quarters. "They've already been filed," Hayes corrected, opening his briefcase to reveal a thick folder. "Unauthorized use of military equipment, insubordination, violation of direct orders during an operational crisis. The prosecution is seeking dishonorable discharge." Not surprising. Hayes raised an eyebrow at her calm reaction. "Captain, you need to understand the seriousness of these charges. Your entire career is at stake." "My career was at stake the moment I decided to save those men, Major. I don't regret that decision." Hayes studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Good, because our defense isn't going to center on denial or technicalities. We're going with justification." He leaned forward. "You violated orders, yes, but you did so because you genuinely believed the lives of 100 American servicemen were at immediate risk, and you had unique knowledge of a viable rescue route that command had refused to consider." Sam nodded. "Exactly. It's not a perfect defense, but it's our best option. Courts-martial juries tend to be sympathetic to officers who take extraordinary risks to save their comrades." Hayes hesitated. "However, there's a complication. General Bradford is pushing for the proceedings to be classified. National security concerns, he says." "Of course he is," Sam said bitterly. "He doesn't want what happened at Ashford Valley to become public knowledge. Which brings me to my next question." Hayes fixed her with a penetrating gaze. "What exactly did happen at Ashford Valley, Captain? Beyond the rescue mission itself, there are whispers about unauthorized weapons testing, about your father's death 5 years ago, about evidence that was suppressed." Sam considered her options carefully. Hayes was her assigned counsel, bound by attorney-client privilege, but he was also part of the military justice system, a system she now had reason to distrust. "Major, what I'm about to tell you goes beyond the scope of my court-martial. It involves potential violations of international treaties, possible illegal weapons testing on American soil, and a cover-up that may have resulted in my father's death." She met his eyes directly. "Are you prepared to hear that, knowing it might place you in a difficult position professionally?" To his credit, Hayes didn't flinch. "Captain, my job is to defend you to the best of my abilities. That includes understanding the full context of your actions." He closed his briefcase with a decisive click. "Tell me everything." For the next hour, Sam laid out the entire story. Her father's final mission, his journal entries, the suspicious circumstances of his crash, the hidden canyon route, the unauthorized SAM sites, and the concealed facility in the Western Ridge. She showed him the satellite imagery and explained her theory about Echo 7, the location where her father might have hidden critical evidence. Hayes listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly grave. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. "This is significant, Captain. If your allegations are true, we're looking at serious violations of both military protocol and international law." "They're true, Major, and I intend to prove it." Hayes nodded slowly. "I believe you believe it, and the evidence you've shown me is compelling. But from a legal perspective, we need more. Your father's hidden evidence would be crucial." "I know, that's why I need to get back to Ashford Valley." "Impossible. Not with the current security, and certainly not while you're facing court-martial. Unless we have congressional authorization." Sam explained her plan to approach the Oversight Committee through Harrison's connection. If we can get a congressional inquiry launched, they could compel access to the valley, to the hidden facility. Hayes considered this, weighing options and angles with a lawyer's precision. "It's risky," he finally said, "but potentially effective. Bradford would have difficulty refusing a direct congressional mandate, especially one backed by allegations this serious." "Then you'll help?" "I'll help. Hayes began gathering his materials. But Captain, you need to understand something. Once we go down this path, there's no turning back. If your allegations are proven false, or if we can't find concrete evidence to support them, you'll face more than just discharge. You could be looking at federal charges for making false statements to Congress. I understand the risks. I hope you do. Hayes rose to leave. One more thing. The prosecution has requested an expedited timeline for your court-martial. Proceedings are set to begin in 3 days. 3 days, that's unusually fast. Yes, it is, Hayes agreed, his tone suggesting he shared her suspicion about the rushed schedule. Almost as if someone wants this handled and forgotten as quickly as possible. After Hayes departed, Sam paced her quarters, mind racing. 3 days wasn't much time to arrange a congressional intervention. Harrison would need to move quickly with his contact. And even if they succeeded, would 3 days be enough for the committee to act? As evening approached, a new visitor arrived at her door, a young airman delivering a message. Captain Mitchell, you're requested at the base hospital, Ward C. Apparently one of the wounded from Eagle Team is asking for you. Sam was surprised. I'm allowed to leave my quarters? Major Hayes arranged it, ma'am. You'll have an escort, of course. 20 minutes later, Sam found herself in the recovery ward of Nellis's medical facility. Her escort, a female MP, maintained a respectful distance as she was directed to a private room at the end of the corridor. Inside, propped up in a hospital bed with his right leg in a cast and bandages across his chest, lay Major Daniel Cooper, commander of Eagle Team. His dark face brightened with a genuine smile as she entered. Captain Mitchell, they finally let you through. Major Cooper, I wasn't sure I'd get to see any of you before the court-martial. Had to pull some strings. Told them I needed to debrief the officer who saved my men. Medical necessity for my recovery. His smile turned wry. Amazing what they'll allow when you've just had 3 surgeries. Sam took the chair beside his bed. How are you healing? Better than I deserve. Took some shrapnel in the chest, broke my femur when a mortar hit too close. But I'm alive. We all are, thanks to you. His expression grew serious. What you did out there, Captain. There's no medal high enough to honor it. I just did what needed doing, sir. No false modesty, Mitchell. You flew a mission most pilots wouldn't attempt in a simulator, let alone reality. You faced down SAM sites that had already downed one of our drones. You created a corridor for extraction when command had written us off. He reached out, gripping her hand with surprising strength. My men are alive because of you. We don't forget that kind of debt. Sam felt a lump forming in her throat. Thank you, sir. Cooper glanced toward the door to ensure they weren't overheard, then lowered his voice. I've heard what they're doing to you. Court-martial dishonorable discharge, it's not right. It's the price of insubordination. Bullshit. Cooper's voice was fierce despite its quietness. It's the price of embarrassing the wrong people, of exposing something they wanted kept hidden. Sam leaned closer. What do you mean? Our mission in Ashford Valley wasn't just routine training, Captain. We were testing a new infiltration protocol against an advanced simulated enemy force, except there was nothing simulated about those forces. Or those SAM sites. You think it was a live-fire exercise with real opposition? I think it was a trap. Cooper's eyes were hard now, the eyes of a combat veteran who had seen too many men die. We were set up, Captain. Sent in with minimal intelligence, inadequate support. When things went south, command seemed unsurprised, almost as if they expected casualties. Why would anyone deliberately endanger an American Special Operations team? Cooper shook his head. I don't know, but what I do know is this. After you extracted us, after we were safely back at base, General Bradford himself came to see me, didn't ask about my wounded men, didn't congratulate us on surviving, just wanted to know if we'd seen anything unusual in the western section of the valley. Sam felt her pulse quicken. The Western Ridge, where the 3rd SAM site was located. Exactly. He was particularly interested in whether any of my men had approached or photographed that area. Did they? As a matter of fact, yes. My recon element took detailed imagery of the entire valley, including that ridge. Standard protocol for documenting the battlefield. Cooper's lips curved in a grim smile. Bradford confiscated all our equipment, all our records. Said it was classified at the highest level. But my tech sergeant is smarter than he looks. Had a backup drive hidden in his boot. The imagery is interesting. From beneath his blanket, Cooper produced a small data chip, pressing it into Sam's palm. There's a tunnel entrance in that ridge, Captain, and what looks like a testing range beyond it. My men captured a few frames of activity there before we were engaged. Technicians in hazmat suits, equipment unlike anything I've seen before. Sam closed her fingers around the chip. This could be the evidence we need. I thought it might help. Whatever's happening in that valley, it cost 8 of my men serious injuries. Could have cost us all our lives if you hadn't come. Cooper's expression hardened. I don't like being used as a pawn in someone's game, Captain. Neither do my men. Thank you, Major. This means more than you know. One more thing. Cooper reached beneath his pillow and withdrew a folded piece of fabric. The men wanted you to have this. Sam unfolded it to find a unit patch, the distinctive insignia of Eagle Team, featuring a lightning bolt striking through storm clouds. Inscribed across the bottom in gold thread were the words, "For the angel who flew through hell." We don't give these to just anyone, Cooper said quietly. You're one of us now, Captain, and we take care of our own. Emotion threatened to overwhelm her, but Sam maintained her composure with military discipline. I'm honored, sir. Good. Now go clear your name and expose whatever the hell is happening in that valley. Cooper settled back against his pillows, suddenly looking exhausted. And Captain, watch your 6. The kind of people who'd use an elite team as test subjects won't hesitate to eliminate one pilot who knows too much. As Sam left the hospital, the Eagle Team patch secure in her pocket and the data chip hidden in her boot, she felt the pieces falling into place. She had allies now: Patterson, Warner, Harrison, Hayes, and now Cooper and his men. She had evidence mounting: her father's journal, the satellite imagery, and now Eagle Team's reconnaissance photos. Most importantly, she had a clear purpose. This was no longer just about clearing her name or even uncovering the truth about her father's death. It was about exposing a conspiracy that had nearly cost 100 American lives, a conspiracy that reached to the highest levels of military command. In her quarters, Sam carefully examined the new data chip, revealing high-resolution images that confirmed her suspicions. The Western Ridge concealed a sophisticated facility built directly into the mountainside. Personnel in protective gear moved equipment that bore no standard military markings. And in one frame, captured at extreme distance but still discernible, stood a civilian in an expensive suit, directing operations. A man who matched the description of Edward Bennett. Sam was compiling this new evidence when her door opened without warning. Harrison entered quickly, face tense with urgency. We've got a problem, he said without preamble. Bradford knows we're on to something. Security around Ashford Valley has doubled again. And he's accelerated the timeline for moving something called the asset from the facility. How do you know this? Congressman Reynolds came through. He's been making inquiries, asking questions about Ashford Valley operations. Bradford got wind of it and panicked. Harrison ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration. Reynolds can get us a hearing with the Oversight Committee, but not for a week. By then the evidence could be gone, Sam finished, and my court-martial will be over. Exactly. We're running out of time. Sam considered their options, weighing risks against necessity. A plan formed in her mind, dangerous, possibly career-ending for anyone involved, but potentially their only chance. We need to get to Echo 7, she said. Now, before they can move whatever they're hiding. Harrison stared at her. You're talking about going back to the valley? Voluntarily? With the security they've got in place? Not through the air. They'll be expecting that. We go in on the ground. That's a 20-mile hike through desert terrain, Mitchell. And the only approach they won't have heavily monitored. Sam pulled out the satellite imagery, pointing to a section of the valley's eastern perimeter. This ridge has minimal security. It's considered impassable on foot because of the terrain. But my father used to take me hiking in worse conditions when I was a teenager. Harrison studied the map, his tactical mind assessing angles and options. Even if we reach the valley, how do we find this Echo 7 marker? It could be anywhere. I know approximately where to look. I saw it during our flight. A rock formation in the canyon, visible only from a specific angle. And once we find it, what then? We document everything, collect my father's evidence, and get it to Congressman Reynolds and the Oversight Committee before Bradford can complete the cover-up. Harrison was silent for a long moment, weighing the proposal. This is insane, he finally said. Breaking containment, entering a restricted military zone without authorization, all while you're facing court-martial. And I'm supposed to be testifying against you. I know it's asking a lot. It's asking for career suicide, Possibly actual suicide if Bradford's security forces are as trigger-happy as I suspect. Sam nodded, acknowledging the risks. I won't think less of you if you walk away, Harrison. This isn't your fight. The hell it isn't. Harrison's eyes flashed with sudden intensity. 100 of my fellow servicemen nearly died because of whatever game Bradford and Bennett are playing. Your father actually did die. This became my fight the moment I followed you into that valley. He straightened, decision made. We'll need supplies, transportation to the perimeter, and a way to document everything we find. Relief washed over Sam. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Mitchell. This is the most reckless plan I've ever agreed to. And coming from me, that's saying something. Despite his words, a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Gear up, we move at midnight. As Harrison left to make preparations, Sam turned back to the images spread across her bed. Somewhere in Ashford Valley lay the truth about her father's death, about Bradford's conspiracy, about the mysterious asset they were so desperate to protect. And she was going to find it, whatever the cost. She touched her father's dog tags, drawing strength from the connection to the man who had taught her that some principles were worth any sacrifice. One more mission, Dad, she whispered. One more flight into the valley. Only this time she wouldn't be coming in from above, with the thunderous power of an F-15 at her command. She would be moving silently, in darkness, relying on skills her father had taught her long before she ever entered a cockpit. The hunt for truth was entering its final phase, and Sarah Mitchell was ready. Darkness wrapped the desert in perfect silence. The moon hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain as Captain Sarah Mitchell and Lieutenant Colonel Michael Harrison made their way through the outer perimeter of Ashford Valley. They moved with practiced efficiency, their steps careful and deliberate on the rocky ground. Both wore dark tactical gear, not military issue, but high-quality civilian equipment acquired through Harrison's connections. Sam paused at the ridge line, dropping to one knee to study the valley below through night vision binoculars. The green-tinted landscape revealed the contours of the training ground where, just days ago, 100 special operators had faced death. Now it was eerily quiet, the only movement coming from periodic security patrols. Dark vehicles following established routes along the valley floor. Security's even heavier than I expected, she whispered, passing the binoculars to Harrison. He scanned the terrain methodically. 2 mobile teams, stationary checkpoints at the main entrance, and Western Ridge Access Road. Drone patrols every 15 minutes. He lowered the binoculars. They're definitely protecting something important. Or moving it, like you said. Sam checked her watch. We have about 5 hours until dawn. That's our window. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Approach on foot through the eastern ridge where the terrain was considered too treacherous for conventional access. Locate Echo 7 within the canyon. Retrieve her father's hidden evidence. And exfiltrate before daylight exposed their presence. Simple in concept, nearly impossible in execution. Escaping Nellis had been the first challenge. Using credentials arranged by Hayes, Harrison had secured an unmarked vehicle from the motor pool. Sam had slipped past her guards during a carefully timed shift change, a momentary lapse in surveillance orchestrated by sympathetic MPs who had heard about her rescue of Eagle Team. Once clear of the base, they had driven 3 hours into the desert, abandoned the vehicle at a remote trailhead, and proceeded on foot across terrain few would willingly traverse. Now the most dangerous part of their mission lay ahead. That's our entry point, Sam said, indicating a narrow fissure in the eastern ridge. Once we're in, we'll need to move quickly. The canyon system is complex, but I've memorized the route. And if we encounter security forces, we avoid them. This isn't a combat mission. Harrison nodded, checking his equipment one final time. They carried minimal gear, night vision, climbing equipment, a digital camera with encryption capabilities, water, and basic survival supplies. The only weapons were a combat knife each and a single sidearm carried by Harrison, a last resort if they faced discovery. Ready? He asked. Sam touched her father's dog tags beneath her tactical shirt. Ready. They descended into the valley like shadows, using natural contours for concealment, freezing in place whenever the distant hum of drone rotors approached. The eastern fissure loomed before them, a jagged cut in the rock wall barely wide enough for a person to pass. "This is your hidden entrance?" Harrison whispered skeptically. "My father found it during geological surveys. It doesn't appear on any official maps." The passage was tight, requiring them to move sideways in places, equipment scraping against stone. Sam led the way, her breathing measured and controlled despite the claustrophobic confines. After several minutes of careful navigation, the fissure widened suddenly, opening into the canyon system proper. Here, massive walls of striated sandstone rose hundreds of feet overhead, creating a maze of interconnected passages. In daylight, flying an F-15E through this labyrinth had required all of Sam's skill. On foot, in darkness, it demanded perfect recall of her father's meticulous mapping. "The main canyon is ahead," she whispered. "We need to stay close to the wall. Security patrols sometimes use the wider sections." They moved in silence, alert to every sound. The canyon twisted and turned, each bend revealing new challenges. Twice they were forced to backtrack when passages proved impassable on foot. Once they pressed themselves into shadow, as a patrol vehicle rumbled past, no more than 30 feet away, its headlights sweeping the canyon walls. After an hour of careful progress, Sam halted abruptly, studying a distinctive rock formation illuminated in the green glow of her night vision. "This is it," she breathed. "The seventh major turn in the canyon. My father called it Echo 7 because the acoustics create a perfect echo at this exact spot." She turned slowly, scanning the rock face. The marker should be here somewhere. Harrison joined her search, examining the canyon wall. "What exactly are we looking for?" "I'm not sure. Some kind of cache or hiding place. My father was methodical. He would have chosen something secure but retrievable." Minutes passed as they searched in increasing frustration. The marker had to be here. This was unquestionably the location Sam had seen from the air. The distinctive E shape in the rock formation unmistakable. "Wait," Harrison said suddenly, running his hand along a section of the wall. "This doesn't match. The coloration is slightly off." Sam moved to his side, examining the area he indicated. A section of the rock face, approximately 2 feet square, had a subtly different texture than its surroundings, almost imperceptible unless you were looking for it. Synthetic rock, she realized. Geological survey teams use it to cover instrument packages. Working together, they located the hidden seam and carefully pried the panel free, revealing a small cavity in the natural rock behind it. Inside, protected by a waterproof case, lay a metal box roughly the size of a hardcover book. Sam removed it with reverent care, her hands trembling slightly. 5 years had passed since her father had placed this here, his final act of defiance against whatever conspiracy had ultimately claimed his life. She opened the case, revealing a ruggedized data drive and a sealed envelope. "We need to document this exactly as we found it," she said, voice tight with emotion. Harrison nodded, taking photographs of the cache and its contents while Sam examined the envelope. Her name was written on it in her father's distinctive handwriting. Fighting back the urge to open it immediately, she secured it in her pack. The data drive joined it moments later. Whatever her father had discovered, whatever evidence he had risked everything to preserve, was now in their possession. "We've got what we came for," Harrison said, replacing the synthetic rock panel. "We should move. It's still 3 hours back to our extraction point." Sam nodded, but as they prepared to depart, a new sound echoed through the canyon. The growl of approaching vehicles, multiple engines growing louder by the second. "That's not a standard patrol," Harrison whispered, instantly alert. They pressed into the shadows as headlights swept the canyon ahead, illuminating the walls with harsh white light. 3 military Humvees rolled into view, coming to a stop less than 100 yards from their position. Armed personnel disembarked, forming a perimeter as a fourth vehicle approached. This one, a black SUV with civilian plates. From their concealed position, Sam and Harrison watched as a man in an expensive suit emerged from the SUV. Even in the limited light, his bearing conveyed authority, tall, distinguished, with silver hair and the confident posture of someone accustomed to command. "Bennett," Harrison breathed, recognition in his voice. The defense contractor surveyed the canyon with obvious impatience. Moments later, General Bradford appeared from the lead Humvee, moving quickly to join him.
"I told you we needed more time," Bradford was saying, his voice carrying clearly in the canyon's acoustics. "The asset isn't ready for transport." "And I told you we don't have more time," Bennett replied coldly. Your pilot's little stunt compromised the entire operation. The congressional inquiry is gaining momentum. We're moving everything tonight. The prototype is unstable, moving at risks. That's no longer your concern, General. Bennett cut him off. Your concern should be containing the Mitchell situation. You assured me she had no evidence, that her father's cache was never located. We've searched the entire valley repeatedly. If Robert Mitchell hid something here, it's long gone. For your sake, I hope you're right. Because if Captain Mitchell produces tangible evidence at her court-martial, a dishonorable discharge will be the least of your worries. Bennett checked his watch. The transport team arrives in 90 minutes. Have the facility cleared by then. And, General, this conversation never happened. As Bennett returned to his vehicle, Bradford remained standing in the canyon, a study in conflicted loyalty. For a moment, he seemed older, diminished, a man caught in currents beyond his control. Then his military bearing reasserted itself, and he began issuing orders to secure the area for transport operations. Sam and Harrison exchanged glances, the implications clear. Whatever asset they were moving, whatever prototype Bradford had mentioned, it was happening tonight. And they were trapped in the canyon, with extraction routes rapidly closing. "We need to move," Harrison whispered. Now, while they're focused on the western ridge, they retreated deeper into the shadow of the canyon wall, working their way backward to find an alternative route. The main passages would soon be crawling with security personnel preparing for the transport operation. Their only hope lay in the smaller, less accessible fissures branching off from the primary canyon system. For the next hour, they navigated a nightmarish labyrinth of narrow passages, some barely wide enough to squeeze through. Twice they encountered dead ends, forcing them to backtrack and try different routes. All the while, the sounds of the security operation grew. Engines, voices, the distinctive whine of heavy equipment being mobilized. "We're running out of options," Harrison said as they paused at another junction. "The eastern exit will be monitored now. We need a different approach." Sam studied the rock formation surrounding them, mind racing through possibilities. There might be another way. When I flew through here, I noticed a secondary canyon system to the south. It's narrower, more treacherous, but it eventually connects to a dry riverbed outside the security perimeter. How far? 2 miles, maybe more, but it's our best shot. The decision made, they altered course, moving south through increasingly difficult terrain. The canyon walls here were unstable, with frequent rock slides evident in the debris underfoot. Progress slowed to a painful crawl as they navigated precarious ledges and steep descents. Behind them, the security operation continued to expand. The drone patrols had increased, forcing them to take cover every few minutes as the unmanned aircraft swept overhead with infrared cameras capable of detecting their body heat through the natural camouflage of the terrain. "They know something's wrong," Harrison observed during one such pause. "They're searching more systematically now." Sam nodded grimly. "They might have detected our entry, or Bradford could be suspicious after his conversation with Bennett. Either way, their window for escape was closing rapidly. The sky to the east was beginning to lighten almost imperceptibly. The first hint of approaching dawn still hours away, but a reminder that darkness would not shield them forever. They pushed on, muscles burning with exertion, every movement a calculated risk as loose stones threatened to announce their presence with telltale sounds. The secondary canyon proved even more challenging than Sam had anticipated, requiring technical climbing in places where the path disappeared into vertical drops. "There," she said finally, pointing ahead to where the canyon widened slightly. "That's the junction with the riverbed. Once we reach that, it's a straight shot to the extraction point." But as they approached the junction, a new sound froze them in place. The distinctive crunch of boots on gravel, coming from the riverbed ahead. A patrol was approaching from the very direction they needed to go. Harrison signaled for silence, drawing them back into the shadows of an overhanging rock. Moments later, 4 armed security personnel appeared, moving methodically along the riverbed, sweeping the area with tactical lights. "They've expanded the search perimeter," Harrison whispered. "They must suspect something." Sam studied the patrol's movement pattern, noting the gap between sweeps. "We can't go back. We'll have to time our crossing between patrols." They watched as the team completed their sweep of the junction and continued up the canyon, disappearing around a bend. The moment they were out of sight, Sam and Harrison moved, scrambling down to the riverbed and across the exposed ground to the southern bank. There,
A series of boulders provided cover as they worked their way eastward, away from the security perimeter. For 20 minutes, they made good progress, the terrain becoming gradually less severe as they left the canyon system behind. The desert opened before them, still shrouded in pre-dawn darkness, but offering fewer places for concealment as they approached the extraction point where Hayes would be waiting with transportation. Then disaster struck. The unmistakable sound of helicopter rotors echoed across the desert, growing louder by the second. Moments later, a powerful spotlight swept the terrain ahead, its beam cutting through the darkness with brutal efficiency. "Search helicopter," Harrison said tersely. "They're blocking our route." They took cover beneath a natural rock overhang as the helicopter passed overhead, its spotlight methodically scanning the desert floor in a grid pattern. Each pass brought it closer to their position. "They're tracking something," Sam realized. "They know where we are." Harrison checked their equipment, his expression grim. "Thermal imaging. They're picking up our heat signature." He made a quick decision. "We need to split up. I'll create a diversion, draw them away. You get the evidence to Hayes." "That's not happening," Sam said flatly. "We both make it out or neither of us does." "This isn't negotiable, Mitchell. That evidence is too important. Your father died to protect it. I'm not letting that sacrifice be in vain." Before she could protest further, the helicopter changed course abruptly, the spotlight swinging directly toward their position. They were out of time and options. Harrison grabbed Sam by the shoulders. "Northeast, 2 miles. Hayes will wait until dawn and no longer. Go, now." Then he was moving in the opposite direction, breaking cover and sprinting across open ground. The helicopter spotlight immediately locked onto him, and the night erupted with the sound of radio communications and vehicle engines as ground units converged on his position. Sam hesitated for one agonizing moment, torn between loyalty and duty. Then, cursing under her breath, she moved in the opposite direction, using the diversion to slip away from the search perimeter. The evidence had to reach Hayes, had to make it to the Congressional Oversight Committee. Harrison had made his choice. She had to honor it. For the next hour, she pushed her body to its limits, moving across the desert with single-minded determination. The sounds of pursuit faded behind her as the security forces concentrated on the diversion Harrison had created. Ahead, the sky was definitely brightening now, the stars fading as dawn approached. The extraction point was a nondescript dirt road 2 miles from the valley perimeter, close enough for a quick escape, far enough to avoid routine security patrols. As Sam crested the final ridge, she saw a dusty pickup truck parked beside the road, a solitary figure leaning against it. Hayes straightened as she approached, relief evident on his face. "Captain, I was beginning to think you weren't coming." "Harrison," she managed between ragged breaths. "They got him." Hayes nodded grimly. "Into the truck. We need to move. Bradford's people will have alerted local authorities by now." As they drove away from Ashford Valley, Sam finally allowed herself to examine what they had risked so much to retrieve. She opened her father's sealed envelope with trembling fingers, finding a handwritten letter and a small key inside. "My dearest Sarah," the letter began. "If you're reading this, then my suspicions were correct, and I won't be coming home. What I've discovered here in Ashford Valley is worse than I imagined. Bradford and his civilian partners are testing weapons specifically designed to circumvent international treaties, chemical biological agents with selective targeting capabilities. The implications for unauthorized warfare are catastrophic. The data drive contains all my documentation, test footage, facility schematics, personnel identifications. The key opens a safety deposit box at First National in Edwards, where I've placed additional insurance. Trust no one in the chain of command. This operation has sanction from levels that shouldn't be possible. I'm making one final reconnaissance flight tomorrow. If I don't return, you'll know they discovered me. I'm sorry to place this burden on you, but you're the only one I trust to see this through. You have always been my greatest achievement, my brightest star. Fly higher, faster, farther than I ever could. All my love, Dad." Sam folded the letter carefully, eyes burning with unshed tears. After 5 years, she finally had confirmation of what she had always suspected. Her father hadn't died in an accident. He had been silenced because of what he discovered. And now that same evidence was in her possession, along with the key to whatever additional insurance he had secured. "We need to get this to Congressman Reynolds immediately,"
she told Hayes, "and we need to find out what happened to Harrison." Hayes nodded, keeping his eyes on the desert road ahead. "Reynolds is expecting us, but Captain, you should prepare yourself. Once this evidence becomes public, there's no going back. Bradford and Bennett have powerful friends. This will escalate beyond a simple court-martial." "I know," Sam said quietly, "but my father believed the truth was worth any price. So do I." The desert sun crested the horizon, bathing the landscape in golden light as they drove toward an uncertain future. Behind them, Ashford Valley held its secrets in ancient stone, and one more prisoner who had dared to challenge those secrets. Congressman John Reynolds's private office in Las Vegas was deliberately nondescript, a simple suite in a mid-tier office building far from the glittering strip. The man himself matched his surroundings: average height, average build, with the carefully neutral appearance of a career politician who preferred working behind the scenes to public attention. What wasn't average was his reaction to the evidence Sam and Hayes presented. He paused, searching for adequate words as he reviewed the data from Robert Mitchell's drive. "This is beyond concerning, Captain. These weapon systems violate at least 3 international treaties the United States is signatory to. That's why my father documented it," Sam said, "and why he was killed for doing so." Reynolds nodded gravely. "The targeting specificity is the most alarming aspect. Biologicals that can select targets based on genetic markers. The ethical implications alone." He closed the laptop, decision made. "The Oversight Committee needs to see this immediately. I'm calling an emergency session." "Sir," Hayes interjected, "there's another urgent matter. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison was captured during our extraction. He's likely being held at Ashford or possibly transferred to a more secure facility." "One problem at a time, Major." Reynolds checked his watch. "I can have the committee assembled within 3 hours. Captain Mitchell, are you prepared to testify? To go on record with everything you've told me?" "Yes, sir. But Harrison risked everything to help obtain this evidence. We can't just abandon him." "And we won't. But our strongest play is to bring this evidence to light immediately. Once it's in the official record, Bradford and his associates will have far less freedom of action." Reynolds' expression softened slightly. "I understand your concern, Captain. Michael Harrison is my godson. His father and I served together. I want him safe as much as you do." This revelation landed with unexpected force. Suddenly, Harrison's connection to the congressman took on new meaning. Not just a professional relationship, but a personal one. It explained his willingness to risk his career, to follow Sam into what had seemed an impossible mission. 3 hours, Sam agreed. "But then we address Harrison's situation." Reynolds nodded. "Agreed. In the meantime, you both need to clean up and prepare. The committee will have questions, hard ones. And Bradford's people will be doing everything possible to discredit you." As if to emphasize his point, the television in the corner of the office suddenly switched to breaking news. A somber anchor appeared on screen. "We're receiving reports of a major security breach at Nellis Air Force Base. Military police are searching for Captain Sarah Mitchell, who escaped custody while awaiting court-martial proceedings. Captain Mitchell, pictured here, is wanted for questioning related to unauthorized access of classified materials and potential espionage charges. Officials stress that she should be considered desperate and potentially dangerous. Anyone with information should contact." Reynolds muted the broadcast. "They're moving faster than I anticipated. We need to accelerate our timeline." "Espionage?" Sam echoed in disbelief. "They're claiming I'm a spy?" "Standard discreditation playbook," Hayes explained grimly. "They're laying groundwork to undermine your testimony, painting you as a security risk rather than a whistleblower." "Change of plans," Reynolds decided. "I'm calling the committee chair directly. We meet in 1 hour, closed session. No media, no advance notice. We present the evidence before Bradford's people can establish their narrative." While Reynolds made his calls, Sam took the opportunity to clean up and change into civilian clothes provided by Hayes. The weight of her father's dog tags remained a constant presence against her skin, a reminder of why all of this mattered, why the risk was necessary. When she emerged, the congressman was concluding his arrangements. "Transportation is on the way," he informed them. "The committee will convene at a secure location rather than the usual chambers, less chance of interference." "And Harrison?" Sam pressed. "I've initiated inquiries through back channels. No official record of his detention exists, which suggests Bradford is keeping this completely off the books." "The transport operation," Sam realized. Bennett said they were moving the asset today. Whatever prototype they've developed, they're relocating it, and probably anyone who might compromise it, including Harrison, Hayes concluded. If they connect him to our infiltration, they'll want to contain him until they've secured their project. Reynolds nodded thoughtfully, which gives us a narrow window of opportunity. Their focus will be on the transport, not on anticipating our next move. The secure location for the emergency committee meeting turned out to be a conference room in the federal building. Access restricted to essential personnel only. By the time Sam arrived with Reynolds and Hayes, 5 other committee members had assembled, 3 congressmen and 2 senators, representing both political parties. Committee Chair Senator Eleanor Winters, a formidable woman in her 60s with decades of national security oversight experience, called the meeting to order with brisk efficiency. Congressman Reynolds has presented compelling reasons for this emergency session, she began. I understand the sensitivity and urgency of the matter. Captain Mitchell, you have the floor. Please present your evidence and testimony. For the next hour, Sam laid out the entire story. Her father's suspicions, his mysterious death, the hidden canyon route, the unauthorized rescue mission, and finally, the recovery of Robert Mitchell's evidence cache. Hayes provided supporting testimony regarding the legal aspects and inconsistencies in Bradford's handling of the court-martial proceedings. Throughout, the committee members listened with growing concern, occasionally interrupting with clarifying questions, but largely allowing the narrative to unfold in its disturbing entirety. When the data from Robert Mitchell's drive was displayed, showing clearly the testing of biological agents with genetic targeting capabilities, the room fell into stunned silence. This technology violates the Biological Weapons Convention, Senator Winters stated finally, and the involvement of a private defense contractor raises serious questions about oversight and authorization. We need to bring in Defense Department leadership immediately, another committee member insisted. This operation cannot have proper authorization. With respect, Reynolds countered, we need to move carefully. If Bradford and Bennett have connections at the highest levels, as Captain Mitchell's father suggested, premature disclosure could allow them to bury evidence, or worse, accelerate deployment of these weapons systems. What do you propose, Congressman? Winters asked. A sealed indictment and simultaneous raid on both Ashford Valley Facility and Bennett Defense Systems headquarters. Secure all evidence and personnel before word can spread. The committee deliberated briefly before Winters rendered their decision. Agreed. I'll contact the Justice Department directly. In the meantime, Captain Mitchell remains under committee protection. All charges related to her court-martial are suspended pending our investigation. As the meeting adjourned, Sam approached Reynolds. What about Harrison? The raid won't happen in time to stop the transport operation. Reynolds' expression was grim. You're right. By the time we secure the necessary warrants and mobilize federal agents, Bradford and Bennett will have moved everything. And everyone they want to protect. Then we need a different approach, Sam insisted. Something immediate. What are you suggesting, Captain? A direct appeal, public exposure. We take what we have to the media, right now, before the transport is complete. Hayes joined them, concern evident on his face. That's extremely risky, without official sanction. It's also our only leverage, Sam countered. Bradford and Bennett value secrecy above all else. If we threaten that secrecy publicly, they'll be forced to respond. Reynolds considered this, weighing options and consequences. A calculated risk, he concluded finally, but potentially effective. I have contacts at several major networks. We could arrange an immediate interview, present enough evidence to raise serious questions without compromising national security. How soon? Sam asked. 30 minutes. There's a local affiliate 3 blocks from here. The next half hour passed in a blur of preparation. Reynolds made calls. Hayes helped Sam organize her presentation, selecting evidence compelling enough to demand attention, but not so classified as to create additional legal jeopardy. They settled on a careful narrative that focused on the unauthorized weapons development and the attempt to silence those who discovered it. The studio was small but professional, the interviewer a veteran journalist known for his coverage of military affairs. As cameras prepared to roll, Sam felt a strange calm settle over her. After 5 years of searching for the truth about her father's death, after days of fighting against a system determined to bury that truth, the moment had finally arrived to bring everything into the light. Captain Mitchell,
The interviewer began once they were live. You've made serious allegations about unauthorized weapons testing and potential violations of international treaties. What evidence supports these claims? Sam spoke clearly and directly, laying out the core facts without embellishment. She presented selected images from her father's data drive showing the testing facility and explained the nature of the weapons being developed there. These biological agents are designed to target specific genetic markers, she explained, in violation of treaties the United States has signed and ratified. My father, Colonel Robert Mitchell, documented these violations 5 years ago and was killed to prevent him from reporting them. That's a serious accusation, the interviewer noted. Are you suggesting murder? I'm stating facts. My father's aircraft suffered catastrophic mechanical failure immediately after he secured evidence of illegal weapons testing. That evidence, which I've now recovered, proves that Brigadier General Thomas Bradford and defense contractor Edward Bennett have been operating a black site weapons program without proper authorization or oversight. The interview continued for 15 minutes, each question allowing Sam to present additional aspects of the conspiracy. She was careful to emphasize the courage of those who had helped expose the truth. Patterson, Hayes, and particularly Harrison, who had sacrificed his freedom to ensure the evidence reached the proper authorities. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison is currently being detained without charges, she stated. His only crime was helping to expose illegal activity that threatened American values and international stability. As the interview concluded, the journalist turned to the camera with evident gravity. We've reached out to the offices of General Bradford and Bennett Defense Systems for comment. Both have declined to respond at this time. The Congressional Oversight Committee on Military Operations has confirmed they are investigating these allegations and have suspended all charges against Captain Mitchell pending the outcome of that investigation. When the camera stopped rolling, Reynolds approached with his phone in hand, expression unreadable. That was effective, he said, perhaps too effective. My sources indicate unusual activity at Edwards Air Force Base. The transport operation at Ashford Valley has been accelerated, and Bradford has gone completely off-grid. And Harrison? Reynolds' expression softened slightly. There's movement there, too. A military transport departed Ashford 30 minutes ago, destination classified, but my contact believes it's headed for a private airfield near Carson City. Hope flared within Sam. That's less than an hour from here. Captain, Hayes interjected. Even with this evidence public, approaching a classified transport remains highly illegal. The committee's protection doesn't extend to further unauthorized actions. I'm aware of the risks, Major. Sam turned to Reynolds. But I'm not leaving Harrison behind. Not after what he did for me. For all of us. Reynolds studied her for a long moment, seeing perhaps the same determination that had driven her father. I understand, he said finally. And while I cannot officially sanction any action, I can tell you that Carson Regional Airport has minimal security, primarily civilian aircraft. A military transport would be noticeable. It was as close to approval as he could give. Sam nodded her thanks. One more thing, Reynolds added, handing her a small key. I believe this belongs with you now. Sam recognized it immediately. The key to her father's safety deposit box, the additional insurance he had mentioned in his letter. She had entrusted it to Reynolds for safekeeping during their preparations. It's already been accessed and the contents secured, Reynolds explained. Your father was thorough, detailed records of everyone involved in the Ashford project, including those at the highest levels of military and government who provided authorization. The committee has what it needs to pursue justice regardless of what happens next. Understanding passed between them. Whatever she chose to do about Harrison, the larger mission was secure. The truth about Ashford Valley and her father's death would come to light. Justice would be served, even if she wasn't there to see it. Hayes drove, his military training evident in the precision with which he navigated the desert roads toward Carson City. Beside him, Sam sat in tense silence, mind cycling through possibilities and plans. They had no weapons, no authority, no backup, only determination and the advantage of surprise. We should have a strategy, Hayes said finally, breaking the silence. Once we reach the airfield. Observe first, Sam replied. Identify the transport and confirm Harrison is aboard, then improvise based on their security posture. Hayes glanced at her skeptically. That's not much of a strategy, Captain. A ghost of a smile touched Sam's lips. Sometimes the best flight plan is the one you make as you go, Major. My father taught me that. As they approached Carson Regional Airport, Hayes killed the headlights and took a circuitous route that brought them to a service road along the perimeter. The airport was small, primarily serving private aircraft and charter flights. At this hour, activity was minimal, except for one section of the tarmac, where unusual movement caught their attention. A military transport aircraft, C-17 Globemaster, stood with engines running, cargo ramp deployed. Around it, security personnel maintained a perimeter, while others supervised the loading of large containers from unmarked trucks. The operation had the hallmarks of a classified transport. Minimal personnel, maximum efficiency, no identifying markings. "That has to be it," Sam said, studying the scene through binoculars. "But I don't see any sign of Harrison or other detainees." "They would be loaded last," Hayes reasoned. "Minimize time on the ground." As if confirming his assessment, a black SUV approached the aircraft. When it stopped, armed guards emerged, surrounding the vehicle as the rear door opened. A figure was extracted. Handcuffed, head covered with a black hood, but unmistakably Harrison from his height and bearing. Two guards guided him firmly toward the aircraft. "They're treating him like a high-value detainee," Hayes observed grimly. "Once he's on that plane, he'll disappear into the system. Black site detention, no legal representation, no record of his whereabouts." Sam had seen enough. "We need a diversion, something to disrupt their loading operation without endangering the aircraft." Hayes considered this, then reached into the truck's glove compartment, removing a small device. "Remote starter for emergency flares," he explained. "Standard equipment in Air Force vehicles for downed pilot scenarios. It can be triggered from up to a mile away." "That works." Sam was already exiting the vehicle. "Set it up near their perimeter. When I give the signal, trigger it. The guards will have to investigate. Standard security protocol. That should give me a window to reach Harrison." "And then what?" Hayes asked. "Even if you reach him, you're still outnumbered and outgunned on an active tarmac." "One problem at a time, Major." Sam checked her watch. 5 minutes. Be ready." While Hayes circled around to position the flares, Sam approached from the opposite direction, using parked aircraft and ground equipment for cover. The loading operation was nearly complete, the final containers being secured inside the C-17's massive cargo bay. Harrison had been halted at the foot of the ramp, guards maintaining position around him while awaiting final clearance to board. Sam reached for her phone, sending a simple text to Hayes. "Now." Seconds later, multiple emergency flares ignited near the perimeter fence, their brilliant red glare and billowing smoke immediately drawing attention. As predicted, security personnel responded, several guards breaking off to investigate the potential breach, while others maintained position, but with attention divided. It was the window Sam needed. Moving swiftly between shadows, she approached the rear of the SUV that had delivered Harrison, using it as cover to close distance to the aircraft ramp. The remaining guards were focused on the flare distraction, their backs to her position. 20 feet separated her from Harrison, 15, 10. Then everything went wrong. A shout from the perimeter indicated Hayes had been discovered. Instantly, the security posture changed, guards swinging back toward their primary duty, the aircraft in its cargo. Sam was caught in the open, exposed and vulnerable. One of the guards spotted her, raising his weapon. "Halt! Hands where I can see them!" Time seemed to slow. Sam calculated options, found none that ended well. She raised her hands slowly, mind racing for some way to salvage the situation. Then a new voice cut through the tension. "Stand down, all of you." General Thomas Bradford emerged from the aircraft, his uniform immaculate despite the hour, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the scene. The guards hesitated, weapons still raised but awaiting confirmation. "Captain Mitchell," Bradford acknowledged. "I should have known you'd find your way here." "General," Sam replied evenly, "I've come for Lieutenant Colonel Harrison." "So I see." Bradford's eyes flicked to the guards. "Lower your weapons. Captain Mitchell isn't here to interfere with our operation." "Are you, Captain?" Understanding dawned slowly. Bradford's calm demeanor, the lack of surprise at her presence, the almost conversational tone. He had anticipated her arrival. "You knew I would come," she realized. "I know you, Captain, better than you think. You're your father's daughter in every way that matters." Bradford approached slowly, stopping a few feet away. "Including your inability to leave a man behind." "Then you know why I'm here." Bradford nodded. "Lieutenant Colonel Harrison is being transferred to a secure facility for debriefing. His involvement in your activities requires thorough investigation." His involvement was helping expose illegal weapons testing, Sam countered, testing you authorized in violation of international treaties. Something flickered in Bradford's eyes. Not guilt exactly, but a complexity of emotion that didn't fit the image of the cold, calculating conspirator she had constructed. You have your father's evidence, he said finally. You've already taken it to the Oversight Committee. The interview you gave is circulating on every major network. The operation is compromised. What more do you want? Justice. For my father. For the 100 men who nearly died in that valley. For Harrison. Bradford was silent for a long moment, weighing options only he could see. Then, unexpectedly, he turned to the guards. Remove Lieutenant Colonel Harrison's restraints. The guards exchanged confused glances, but complied, removing the hood and handcuffs. Harrison blinked in the sudden light, disoriented until his gaze found Sam. Understanding passed between them without words. The mission accomplished, the evidence secure. Why? Sam asked Bradford, genuine confusion in her voice. Because some things matter more than others, Bradford replied cryptically. He turned to Harrison. You're free to go, Lieutenant Colonel. Consider yourself fortunate. As Harrison moved cautiously toward Sam, Bradford added, The weapons program was never meant for deployment, Captain. It was research, theoretical exploration of defensive countermeasures against potential enemy bioweapons. Your father misunderstood what he saw. He understood enough to die for it, Sam replied coldly. Robert's death was a genuine accident, Bradford insisted. A mechanical failure that occurred at the worst possible moment. I've lived with that weight for 5 years. And the cover-up? The suppressed evidence? The threats against anyone who asked questions? Bradford's expression hardened. That was Bennett and his associates. Their agenda extended beyond the original research parameters. Once I realized how far they intended to go, he trailed off, then straightened. It doesn't matter now. The program is finished. The committee will see to that. Before Sam could respond, new vehicles approached rapidly. Unmarked SUVs with government plates. Federal agents, responding to the committee's authorization for the raids Reynolds had mentioned. It seems our time is up, Bradford observed with surprising equanimity. Captain Mitchell, Lieutenant Colonel Harrison. I suggest you cooperate fully with the investigators. Tell them everything you know. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I intend to do the same. As federal agents swarmed the tarmac, taking control of the aircraft and detaining security personnel, Sam and Harrison found themselves pulled into the organized chaos of a major federal operation. Hayes was located. The three of them kept together, but separate from those being detained. Did you get it all? Sam asked Harrison quietly once they had a moment alone. Everything my father died for? Harrison nodded. The committee has the evidence. Reynolds confirmed multiple indictments are already being prepared. Bennett is the primary target, but there will be others, high-ranking officials who authorize the program. And Bradford? That's complicated. Reynolds thinks he might have been playing a double game, appearing to cooperate with Bennett while gathering evidence against him. His testimony will be crucial to the case. Sam absorbed this, struggling to reconcile it with her 5-year certainty of Bradford's guilt. I don't know if I can believe that, she admitted. You don't have to, Harrison replied. The evidence will speak for itself now. The truth will come out, whatever it is. That's what matters. As dawn broke over the desert, federal agents completed their preliminary work, separating detainees for transport and securing the aircraft and its controversial cargo. Sam, Harrison, and Hayes were escorted to a government vehicle for return to Las Vegas, where formal statements would be taken. Before departing, Sam took a moment alone, removing her father's dog tags and holding them in her palm. The metal was warm from contact with her skin, the stamped information still clearly legible after all these years. Mitchell, Robert J. Her thumb traced the letters with familiar reverence. It's done, Dad, she whispered. The truth is out. Whatever happens next, they can't bury it again. With careful movements, she returned the tags to their place around her neck, the weight familiar and comforting against her skin. Some burdens were never meant to be set down, only carried with honor until the journey's end. As the vehicle pulled away from Carson Regional Airport, Sam gazed out at the desert landscape bathed in morning light. The mission that had begun 5 years ago with her father's discovery had finally reached its conclusion. Justice would follow in the measured pace of investigations, hearings, and eventually trials.
Her part, the desperate flight through enemy territory, the recovery of crucial evidence, the exposure of dangerous secrets, was complete. What remained was the future, uncertain but filled with possibilities that had seemed impossible just days ago. Her military career might be salvageable given the circumstances, or it might be time for a different path entirely. Those decisions could wait. For now, it was enough to have honored her father's legacy, to have saved 100 American lives, and to have proven that sometimes the rules worth following weren't written in any manual but inscribed on the heart. Higher, faster, farther, her father's motto, now hers. Not just about flying, but about reaching beyond what seemed possible, about refusing to accept comfortable lies when uncomfortable truths demanded action. Beside her, Harrison sat in companionable silence, his presence a reminder that even the most solitary missions sometimes required unexpected allies. Ahead, the city shimmered in the distance, where Reynolds and the committee awaited their return. The story wasn't over, not completely, but this chapter, the one that had consumed her life for 5 long years, had reached its conclusion. Whatever came next, Sarah Mitchell was ready to face it with the same courage, determination, and integrity that had carried her through the impossible mission now behind her. Some flights changed the pilot forever. This one had changed everything. Author's note, dear readers, thank you for joining me on this journey through the skies and shadows of Ashford Valley. When I first conceived this story, I wanted to explore what happens when duty conflicts with conscience, when following orders means abandoning those who need us most. Sarah Mitchell represents something we don't often see celebrated in military fiction, a woman who refuses to accept no when lives hang in the balance. But this isn't just a story about defiance. It's about the cost of standing up for what's right when the entire system stands against you. I've drawn inspiration from real pilots, real soldiers, and real whistleblowers who faced impossible choices. The canyon flight that forms the heart of this story is based on actual low-altitude infiltration routes used by Special Operations Forces, though I've taken creative liberties with the specifics. The weapons technology described, while fictional in its exact configuration, reflects genuine concerns within the defense and ethics communities about the future of targeted biological agents. What struck me most while writing this was how often we ask our service members to trust the system, even when that system fails them. Sarah's father paid the ultimate price for trying to do the right thing through proper channels. Sarah herself had to go outside those channels to save lives and expose the truth. This tension between institutional loyalty and moral imperative is something many veterans grapple with long after they leave the service. To my readers over 50, many of whom served or had loved ones serve in various conflicts, I hope Sarah's story resonates with you. You've lived through eras when questioning authority was dangerous, when speaking truth to power could destroy careers and families. Yet you also know that some truths are worth any sacrifice. That's the legacy I wanted to honor here. The relationship between Sarah and her father reflects something I've observed in many military families: how dedication to service passes from generation to generation, but also how each generation must find their own way to honor that legacy. Sarah doesn't simply follow in her father's footsteps. She completes his mission in her own way, on her own terms. I chose to make the antagonist complex rather than simply villainous. General Bradford isn't pure evil. He's a man caught between conflicting duties, someone who made choices he thought were right at the time. Even Edward Bennett, the defense contractor, believes he's serving national security interests. This moral ambiguity is intentional. The real world rarely offers us clear heroes and villains. More often, we face good people making bad choices under impossible pressure. The themes of this story, loyalty, sacrifice, truth, and justice, are timeless. But they're also particularly relevant in our current moment, when institutions we once trusted unconditionally are being questioned, when transparency and accountability matter more than ever. Sarah's journey from dutiful officer to whistleblower mirrors a transformation many of you have witnessed in your own lives or the lives of those you love. I want to acknowledge that this story asks a lot of its readers emotionally. It depicts military personnel in danger, conspiracy at high levels, and a daughter's desperate quest to honor her father's memory. These aren't light topics,
But I believe you, my readers who've lived through wars, political upheavals, and societal changes, can handle complexity and nuance. You've earned stories that don't talk down to you or offer easy answers. Finally, a word about hope. Yes, this story puts its characters through hell. Yes, there are costs and consequences that can't be undone. But ultimately, it's a story about truth prevailing, about courage being rewarded, about the power of individuals to change systems that seem immovable. In these uncertain times, I wanted to remind us all that one person, armed with truth and unwilling to back down, can make a difference. Thank you for flying with Sarah Mitchell through the canyons of Ashford Valley. Thank you for believing that stories still matter, that characters can inspire us, and that fiction can illuminate truths we sometimes struggle to see in reality. May you always fly higher, faster, and farther than you think possible. With gratitude and respect, your storyteller.